Salutations from space and aloha from Earth, friends. It is Wednesday, miércoles, Mercury's Day at 11:11 a.m., which means it's time for Storytelling Hour. And one of my favorite jams to share with you today about the Christmas mysteries, or really the solstice mysteries. Like, I've got my Christmas sweater. It's like Hanukkah colors. I don't give it. Yeah, actually, I do. I really, really care. I was just contemplating this morning how to present this information to you, and it asked me to retrograde back down memory lane and think about when these Christmas Mystery School ideas first started coming in for me. And I want to share a little bit there because part of this today, I'm really realizing, is an opportunity for me to lay out the book that this wants to become. I'm going to do my best to multitask here because there are actually also some slide realignments that I need to do before I hit share screen for you, but that's happening right now, and I think it worked. We're going to find out. All right. Yeah. I mean, I had already received in a vision in Seattle, Washington, where I lived at this time, the image of the lights of strings on a Christmas tree as the stars of our sky. And that very important star that's at the top of the tree. And I'll share that with you too. I already tuned into some of the esoteric ideas that perhaps Christ, the so-called Son of God or Son of Man, let's say Son of Human, is the sun in our sky. And I had seen how brilliantly that helps us understand so much more about astrology, and that goes back and forth, right? I had tuned into some of the astrotheology images of the three kings in the sky following that Christmas star to the virgin birth in the manger. And we'll get into some of that today as well. I had heard things that related Santa Claus to Siberian shamanism and specifically around like mushroom medicine. And I find all of that to be quite fascinating as well. I think I had already recorded a storytelling podcast episode with my dear friend Maria Stark called The Santa Pause, where we were really just talking about some of the weirdness of the Santa Claus and elf myth. And at the time, I was particularly triggered by the elf on the shelf thing, which just felt like sponsored by the NSA, perhaps. Because one of my challenges with Christmas, as it is typically celebrated these days, is just the consumerism and how far it's gotten from nature and from the tree. And also this idea of, you better be nice or else no gifts for you. The naughty kids get coal. And it just kind of felt like this whole, big brother is always watching you thing. So Elf on the Shelf, if you're hip to that trip, took that to some whole other level. And I should, maybe for those of you who are seeing this later on YouTube, if you check the description, not only will you see ways that you can support my work, but I will find that Santa Pause episode with Maria Stark from the old version of the Storytelling podcast and link that up. It's pretty hilarious. It's good comedy. Maria and I really get to explore Gemini. It's light and shadow together. But it was really 8 years ago, 2016, when I went to Japan, where my sister was then living with her family, that I first saw Santa's sleigh in the sky. And it's something I've loved sharing since that time. We're going to look to Santa's sleigh today, to the Christmas tree with its lights, ornaments, and star on top. We're going to find some astronomical decoding for Christ and the three Marys and the three kings and some of those images today too. We'll also go into the space of other faiths. We'll look a bit at the dreidel, and also at the Hanukkah and the menorah. And I would love to add so much more to this. And I think I will wait until the end of this trip to share about what I'm now calling the Solstice Mystery School. It's not the first time I've called it that. And how really, especially now that we have a baby in the house, that I'm very interested in creating a mystery school with levels of initiation that will help our kids be magical and keep the magic on one level. On another level, to help expose them to metaphysics, to sacred geometry, to sacred astronomy, to the power of consciousness, to miracles, if you will. And to also finding ways to move from consumerist to like the elf, the toy maker, the Santa, right? Just basically a path for all of us to utilize at this time of the year, gathering, connection, tribe, but also giving, and really moving from consumerism to compassion. And I have a lot of work to do in that way. So I'm going to need some help with the Solstice Mystery School. So I think we'll get back to that at the end, or maybe I'll just leave that as a seed to plant that we can watch sprout and water along the way. Because, yeah, with a baby in the house now, I'm getting serious about this. Okay. So 8 years ago, I'm visiting my sister in Japan, Christmas time. Fortunately, my sister found her way to Earth and Earth wisdom well before I did. I followed my sister in many ways, she being 14 months my elder and has always been a great friend and guide. I didn't think that when my sister went very natural, and eventually that led her to becoming a naturopathic doctor, that I would follow in any kind of paganist footsteps. But I have, and for me, it was kind of a different path through really important earth medicines and meeting the plants, which introduced me to the planets, finding astrology, but finding astrology through my love for the living sky and the turning of the ages, and much in the kind of esoteric tradition and the megaliths, and just really learning in this marriage of heaven and earth, that as I looked at the sky, become more aware of my earthling nature and finding my way even down to the heart of earth, and all of these things that I like to teach that have become the principles for my school, which is the School of Earth Astrology. So anyway, we were in Japan, and I loved how much opportunity there was in Japan to really align with ceremony, with the sacred, my sister Hillary and I got to take a journey, just the two of us, down to Kyoto from Tokyo, where they were living. And I'll never forget a tea ceremony where we sat. It actually makes me want to fill my cup right now because they were doing tea ceremony very differently than I had experienced it in festival culture in the Northwest when I first met tea. Um, because it took forever to get my cup filled, and I was kind of at the end of the line. But the reason in this ceremony, it was a matcha ceremony, is this amazing woman who was pouring the tea. It's like every cup there would be this very intricate ceremony, aligning with the directions. So much, of course, that I didn't understand. And then one cup would get filled, and it would be passed to the person next to her. And then the whole ritual again, and the next cup for the next person. And I was like pretty far down the line, like, man, when am I going to get my tea around here? But it was so beautiful to experience that ritual, that ceremony, And I was maybe even more at that time than today, though, working on it and trying to keep it alive for the kids. I was really in my ceremonialist space. And I was really hoping to share this with the kids. And it's something that I just love my sister Hillary so much. She had for years before this time and before I got hip, been doing Solstice with the kids where they would go out to nature. It didn't make some huge thing out of it, but it's like, okay, so Christmas can be the tree and the gifts and these things. Certainly family being a key component of that. But on solstice, we're going to get out in nature and have a hike. And in Japan, that was so amazing because we got to go to Fujisan. And I just want to reflect upon that, like, and I'm, maybe you don't, and I don't, so I shouldn't speak out of turn, but Fuji-san, it's like the mountain is Mr. Fuji. It's like a being, it's a person, I think, to use language that I'm maybe more familiar with, that's more resonant with the land that I live, like that's grandfather. There's this thing that said that the mountain closest to your birthplace is your grandfather, and the body of water closest to your birthplace is your grandmother. And I love that so much. And I just love that, in the old ways, in the land now called Japan, the mountain itself, nature, is the temple. So one thing I loved exploring in my short time there in Japan was just how many sacred places there were. Like, I was just really starting to open into my intuition and my empathy. And so Tokyo was really difficult for me. It was just so many people, right? Just swarms of people, it felt like, and just like trying to keep my own space, which in one level was crazy easy because everybody was like not making eye contact. Maybe it was because I was a foreigner. I don't know. I was just like hoping somebody would look at me so I could bow to them. I was like, I want to learn how to do that. But anyway, I remember actually buying this beautiful teapot from just a master at a shop in Tokyo, coming out the door like so excited about this, and just being absolutely overwhelmed because I just drank some tea and I was very open of so many people, and it felt like they were all coming right at me, and I was just like starting to have a panic attack. But then we made it to this beautiful open space, this park with an amazing temple there, and many were preparing for the great ceremonies for the new year. All right, I want to bring you to Kamakura now, which is one of my favorite places that we visited besides Kyoto. We happened to arrive at this Buddhist temple, and it was just my sister Hillary and myself at that time. We were there without her kids. And there was this great ceremony happening like in the temple that we got to kind of eavesdrop on a little bit. I don't know what it was about, but it was really intricate and just beautiful. All of these monks doing this ritual. And then, as it is in many of the temples that, anyway, that I visited in Japan, there's kind of like a Buddhist temple. And then as you climb the hillside or the mountain nearby, you'll climb up to like an older, like a Shinto shrine. And at this particular place in Kamakura, that climb brings you past all of these beautiful statues of Crow Tengu. And Crow has long been one of my allies, guides. And so it was just such a powerful place to be. In my understanding, and again, I don't understand much, but my understanding is that Crow Tengu, it's like these priests who had been irreverent and off course and kind of betrayed spirit in their lifetimes, um, are then serving time as Crow Tengu, who are these amazing like crow warriors. That's the sword. Who are basically helping priests stay in line so that they won't fall into this fate. And I think after they serve their time, then they get to go to whatever's next. Again, my understanding is very little, but I will say climbing up this hillside past all of these beautiful statues of Tengu and Crow Tengu to get to this shrine was maybe my like happiest place in Japan. There's another spot in Kamakura that I want to bring you to now because it really had me just like, what is going on here? In Japan, like much of, I'm going to be careful when I say this, but I also want to say it, and please pardon my ignorance, and I hope not to offend. But like I studied Kung Fu when I was a kid, right? Tai Lu Chuan Fa. And Sifu, which you might know the word sensei, which is a Japanese word, right? Sifu is the Chinese equivalent. Like he trained in China, temple in China, Sifu Tall Bear, Mohawk Indians, and like old images of Tall Bear were so amazing because he'd be sitting with all the other monks who all have the shaved head and like the little dots, in the hair, and then Sifu had this huge mohawk, right? And he's just this giant mohawk because they let him like keep his heritage as he was training in Japan. And a really cool thing was that they trained healing before training hurting. And he explained to me, therefore, like your kung fu will never fall into this idea that it's meant to hurt. Koa, Anna's kid, 9 years old now, is studying martial arts. And so it's been really fun to share some of these stories with him as I watch him train. And we were watching videos of Tall Bear recently. Anyway, what I heard from Tall Bear, and it's one thing that typically people who are studying Kung Fu will say, is that the Kung Fu then went to Japan, where it was turned into karate, which is a very different thing. I mean, I saw that in this tea ceremony as well. There's much in Japan that seems to be they received many of the wisdom traditions from China and then made them their own. And there's this kind of ritualistic, there's this like, I don't know, like perfection is the right word, but Virgo, like efficiency thing, this like, transformation that it goes through. And, of course, Buddhism, like that didn't start in Japan, right? It's India, right? And so to get to the point, because it has much to do with what we'll do together here today as we explore the Earth astrology of Santa's Sleigh and many of the other solstice mysteries, there's this gigantic Buddha in Kamakura in Japan. You can actually go inside this giant golden Buddha, right? And I was tripping on, well, like, look at this, like, Buddha from India. And I can, like, make a donation over here to buy some incense to burn in this particular urn over here, which had around its base the 12 signs of the Chinese zodiac, the 12 animals, right? I'm a rabbit. What's up, rabbits? What's up? And And so I'm like, okay, here's like this Chinese zodiac, this Indian Buddha. And then I came to find that in Japan, they're working through that cycle. Like this would be the year of the dragon, right? But instead of waiting for Chinese New Year's, um, typically in the time many of us would call February, they actually shift from one animal to the next at on January 1st, like the Gregorian New Year. So I was just tripping. It's like, wow, there's like this Gregorian, so I guess Roman January 1st thing to shift through these Chinese zodiac years at this Buddhist temple, right? And it's like, what an amazing melting pot of different cultures all coming together to explore and express and align with the spirit of the season. A really cool thing in Japan, which I guess we get to see in modern times by people who call in the new year and give all the hate they can to the one that's going bye-bye. You've seen that a lot. Maybe a more mythic, beautiful, and old image too would be Janus, for which January is named, a god whose head is looking back and one looking forward, or like Father Time, and then the babe, the solstice babe, the Christmas babe, right? And so there's many ways to look at that from kind of a Christian religious context. There's astronomical ways that we'll look at today, and I hope they don't offend. But we'll sometimes just see like a grim reapery looking bearded Saturnian sickled Father Time representing the year we're releasing and like this baby of the new year to come. And somehow that's happening on January 1st. Have you ever wondered why? And January 1st happens in Tokyo well before it happens where I live in California, where we get it 3 hours after those of you who live in New York, who get it, so many hours after the folks turn the calendar page in London, and that's after they do in Berlin. Why should we not align the turning of the year with a global moment, like a solstice or an equinox? And we know many astrologers, and interestingly, astronomers will look at the so-called vernal equinox. I say so-called because it's a very hemispheric thing to say. Vernal means spring. So I would rather say the east equinox, and I'll show you why. Or the Aries equinox. Of course, the astronomers don't want to hear that. But when the sun ingresses tropical Aries, many look at that time as the beginning of the astrological year. And I think there's a beautiful reason for this. Some traditions, and some astrology traditions, by the way, like Uranian astrology, cosmobiology, they, instead of looking at the sun's movement into Aries to describe the beginning of the astrological year, they'll look to the sun's movement into Capricorn. Well, no surprise that those traditions of Uranian astrology, cosmobiology, they come out of the far northern lands of Germany. And in so much of the Germanic tradition, Norse tradition, Druidic tradition, Celtic tradition, or so we believe, there's so much to this idea that it is the winter solstice that is the beginning of the year, because of course this is the birth of the sun, the birth of the light out of the longest night. Now, I like to act locally but think globally, and then of course I am challenged because winter solstice north of the equator of course, is the same time as summer solstice in the lands down under. So if we were suggesting that the year begins at winter solstice, then that would be a time separated by about 6 months from beings living in Peru and those in Honolulu. There's something about the 0 Aries, though it's spring equinox for half of the Earth and autumnal equinox for the other. There's something where I feel that can perhaps be a better global mark. Why? Because at that time, when the sun's at this point, where the plane of the year crosses the plane of the day, where the ecliptic norths across the equator, that point is due east of the Earth, because the Earth has south and north. And I like to describe this Capricorn solstice time as Southstice, to speak more globally, and to help remind you, as I often am inclined to do, that like so many sacred systems of ancient wisdom traditions, the tropical zodiac is directionally aligned. In fact, I would suggest its signs are directionally defined. So I'm in Tokyo contemplating, how can I bring more earth wisdom, old wisdom, more attention to the tree that was cut down and living in my sister's house, or dying in my sister's house, as it were. And perhaps even to the sun, the Earth-Sun relationship, and what about the moon? And not have this be all about Santa's sleigh, because having had our beautiful hike on Mount Fuji, which was amazing, then it was back to, how many days till Christmas and moving the elf on the shelf. And, the Gemini in me does like to play games with that spy being, but I'm also just disgusted by the spyness of that elf. And how could we keep it more real? How could we honor, even discover, recover the ancient traditions, and make sure that Christmas isn't just some how many presents under the tree and how many days till next Christmas? And so I was asking the kids, my sister's kids, who were all much younger then, what is Christmas about? And you get the Santa and the elves. I mean, that's not going to happen, of course. Some homes are going to start with, well, we go to church. It's about the birth of Christ. But in this place, and we're not alone in this, it was all Santa and the elves. And instead of saying like, no, that's trash, I want to say, oh, that's beautiful. What an amazing tale. But what is that? What does that say, right? But okay, well, what else is it? And it's the tree and the lights and the star. Oh, and of course it's family. But in this particular family, it took a while to get to this idea that Christmas has anything to do with Christ, right? And it was just interesting to see, because for this particular tradition honoring solstice, much of the kind of religious view had been taken away. Now, of course, different houses on this block are doing that very differently. Some are celebrating Hanukkah, which amazingly in this year of 2024, Hanukkah begins on December 25th. So there's this kind of merging of the days of Christmas and the days of Hanukkah, depending on how you calculate either of those. This is in accordance with the Metonic cycle, as it's now named after this Greek astronomer, though it was in the synchronization of lunar and solar time in calendrical systems that well preceded Meton, like in the Chinese moon phase calendar, like in the Hebrew calendar, which comes from the Babylonian, reaching back to the Akkadian, yes. So why name it after the Greek who figured out that 19 years is almost exactly equal to 235 lunation? Well, Hanukkah is tuned to lunations, yes. Although, wow, would someone please educate me in the comments about where in the calendar, in the Jewish calendar, Hanukkah begins? Maybe we can research that together. Maybe it's for another time. What I will say is the next time that Hanukkah will begin on Christmas Day will be 19 years from now. So 2024 plus 19, I always do plus 20 minus 1, would be 2043. And then last time, minus 20 plus 1 would be 2005. And yeah, I wish I was ready to just birth the Solstice Mystery School, because I wanted to have stories from many traditions, including the Christmas tradition, the Jewish tradition. So say Christian, sorry, let this dog out. Doorbell rings and I knew it was going to be dangerous. Sorry for the bark. Her bark is worse than her bite, and she's very cuddly too, but this is an issue. PK wrote, and thank you, PK. Hanukkah begins on the 25th day of Kislev in the Jewish calendar. This date can fall anywhere between late November and late December in the Gregorian calendar. I appreciate that, PK. Thank you very much. Yeah, so for these to synchronize, it's intriguing. And how can we pull from other traditions? The other thing that I want to be careful with is to not make this Solstice Mystery School a Northern Hemispheric thing. So again, honoring the truth that Solstice or Capricorn solstice is summer solstice in Sydney, Australia, and in Bolivia, South Africa, right? And also honoring, however, that Santa lives at the North Pole, and Santa's sleigh is the wagon that directs our gaze towards that North Pole in the heavens. And so I'll need new tales, perhaps, or to learn about, to be educated about some of the Southern Hemisphere tales that can do something similar. Because on this night, 8 years ago, about when I was visiting my sister and her family in Japan, where they were living for some time, contemplating how I can try to do my service to bring more tree and more sun, that's the Christ in my view, and more moon, more earth into my family's household. I was up on the rooftop, click, 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 having spent so many hours building a trampoline from St. Nick, and taking a break and being with the stars. And it was a dark night, and even in this very light polluted place that Tokyo is, I was able to connect to the stars. And as I like to, I align myself with the directions. And so of course I work with Polaris to do this at nighttime when the clouds allow and I'm north of the equator. And I, for the first time, saw Santa's sleigh in the sky. I didn't share this with those kids at this time. I have shared it since and found them to be relatively uninterested. So a thing I wonder now and seek help with around this is how to make this interesting. What is this? So actually, let me say something I thought I might reserve for the end, but we can go back there. I'm very intent on creating a mystery school that helps bring kids and adults from snowflake through elf to toy maker. There'll be other names along the way, but to really keep the magic alive. I know some who would prefer never to tell a lie, never to tell a tale to a kid about one that may or may not exist. I want to be careful in case there's young ears here with us today. My greatest fear is you hear this very magical story, and if the story goes away, then magic will go with it. How can we prevent this from happening? So the whole idea of the Solstice Mystery School is it's a magical school for kids and adults where we're connecting to miracles, the power of consciousness, and through some of the ancient mystery school trainings like sacred geometry, harmony, right? So just think about the beauty of people coming together to sing songs, the sacred astronomy, and actually conducting experiments like the experiments of Masaru Emoto and the hidden messages of water, like some of the stuff that Veda Austin's up to with ice now. Hopefully you've checked some of that out. And this is where I want to call in the whole team, where we can just bring in different games to play to help develop psychic senses for the kids, right? But how can we do that in a fun way? So instead of saying, okay, well, here's this sacred geometry ritual that you must perform, right? At some age, like, I want to hear that. I'm like, let's do it, right? But how about, like, let's make some snowflakes to decorate the house with? How are we going to do that, right? Well, we're going to make paper dolls, but, snowflakes are hexagonal. What do you mean? Well, this 8-pointed snowflake that we just bought from the store is not how snowflakes do. Right? Sixness. Hexagons are the best of gons, right? I want to honor Terrarian. I see that you say your child self wants to time travel to your mystery school. No. Our mystery school will help us time travel to our child self and really reclaim that beauty, that magic, and utilize that spirit to move forward. And in part, by the way, in the end, we're kind of creating compassionate crafters, toy makers, and we create things to give to kids who don't receive toys at this time of year because their parents can't afford to, or whatever it may be, right? So that's like the general shape is to move from Snowflake, who's just unwrapping gifts. Some of you don't do that. You don't have to start there, but moving to a place of kind of the compassionate gift giver, the philanthropy, the charitable heart. Yeah. But magically so. Okay. Anyway, let me show you Santa's sleigh in the sky. But I think we will start with the Christmas tree and the star on top. Buttons, 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 clickers, and let's make sure the tea is flowing. Okay. One of these, one of those, one of these, and away we go. Thank you, by the way, for being here today, friends. The present of your presence is the greatest gift. The School of Earth Astrology, teaching not only astrology and sacred astronomy, but these other mystical sacred science traditions, harmony, the sacred geometry, the number magic, and more from the ground up, and celebrating not only the starry language, but the earthly language, the marriage of heaven and earth. So, how weird to begin a year on January 1st. We will actually explore a little bit of the astronomy behind January 1st that actually makes it quite interesting. But January 1st at midnight happens in New York 3 hours before it does in California, where I live. As I age, that's quite helpful because should I want to partake, I can watch the ball drop in Times Square and still get to bed by 9 p.m., or 9:05 after I've had that New Year's kiss. But why is January 1st the New Year's? And why not actually choose a moment that happens in New York at the same time it happens in California and Hawaii and Tokyo and Sydney, Australia, and everywhere on the earth? And those times to find in the year, which is, of course, the cycle of earth and sun, would be like this. Here is a wonderful candidate. This beginning of a season. Now, of course, the sun ingressing tropical Capricorn, which is the chart shown here, it is at 1:20 a.m. Pacific time this year on December 21st, 2024, if you're into that whole Gregorian trip. Of course, that means 4:20 a.m. in New York, and actually December 20th at 11:20 p.m. in Honolulu, and adjust according to your own clock. But regardless, that shift in the clock is just honoring the truth that this moment is happening in the same moment everywhere on earth. For some folks, it will be daytime, for some night. I've chosen, for those of you who speak astrology charts, just to utilize the so-called natural zodiac, the 0 Aries on the left, and I'll show you a little bit of why. There's some astronomical roots to the natural nature of the 0 Aries wheel. I've chosen to show that, not to just cast this chart from a local point of view, or else the sun would be down at the bottom of the chart, right? 1:20 a.m. means the middle of the night, and this looks like the middle of the day. No, because this is a houseless chart, despite those numbers on the inside. These are just, the houses of Earth, which are the tropical signs. Anyway, here's this global moment. Now, I want to share, I learned this thing last year, and let me just put that chart away as I say this, that though the Chinese calendar with which I am most familiar is a solely lunar thing, like the Hebrew calendar too, right? Aligning its months to the moons, to the phases of the moon, and then using a system of intercalary months or leap months to, over the course of the 19-year cycle, realign or synchronize the silver and the gold. The silver, I mean to say, a lunar-based calendar, and the gold, a solar calendar. A solar calendar like the Gregorian, Julian calendar, like the tropical zodiac, right, keeps the Earth-Sun relationship. A lunar phase calendar, which aligns the months to the phases of the moon, will keep Earth, Moon, Sun. And many of them, not all of them, but many of the lunisolar calendar, lunar calendar, moon phase calendars also use leap months so that that silver time, that moon time, will synchronize with the golden time, with the sun time. And again, that's a 19-year synchronization, now called the Metonic cycle. 19 years is almost exactly equal to 235 lunations. There's another cycle of 76 years called the Calyptic cycle that was really key to synchronizing silver and golden time in some of the ancient systems. Some of that 76ness more necessary before zero and decimal points came into our mathematics. And let's not nerd out too much in that direction right now, though you know I'd love to. I wore my glasses and everything. Right. So I think it was this year in 2024. Yeah, it definitely was Year of the Dragon that I learned that while this changing of the zodiac, like the year zodiac, so Chinese zodiac, right, is celebrated at Chinese New Year, which, by the way, is aligned with a new moon. Now, it's not a new moon that most of us describe when we talk new moon in astrology or astronomy these days, which is the moon-sun conjunction, unless it's a solar eclipse and you happen to be on Earth that is being shadowed as the moon occults the sun. A new moon is a no moon, meaning you cannot see the moon at that time, right? It's blinded in the fires of the light every month, every lunation, every 29 and a half days. The moon goes into the fires of the sun and is then reborn. And she's reborn as the sliver crescent, Diana's bow, the young maiden moon in the sunset west. So a day, sometimes 2 days after the moon-sun conjunction each month, the sun sets, and then we see that sliver crescent. And this, by the way, would be why old traditions that align their months to moons or to the phases began their days not at sunrise, but at sunset. Why? Because it's the sunset sky where we see the young moon, and that marks the first day of the month. In Hawaii, they call it the Hilo moon, first moon, many names. I like to call it Diana's bow, but it's that sliver smile of the moon before it grows into the full O, which is full moon, moon opposite sun, right? I have wondered if one of the principal New Years in the Hebrew calendar happens around autumnal equinox, because that is the time of the year that is like sunset, spring, sunrise, summer, midday, autumn, sunset, winter, midnight. Most of us came into some tradition that's using a calendar that begins its days at midnight, which seems crazy. And 12 a.m. is not midnight anyway. But there is something to that, because it's when the sun, though deepest beneath the earth, does begin his daily climb. Anyway, what I learned this year, I was at the Conscious Life Expo, was that though the turning of the energies of the year, right, 2023 was a year of the rabbit. Let's go. 2024, to speak Gregorian, the year of the dragon. Right now in Japan, they literally would celebrate that change on January 1st. Right? Again, this weird kind of all of these things coming together. In China, they do not celebrate it at Chinese New Year, which, by the way, is not the moon-sun conjunction, but the young moon, so about the day after the conjunction, as seen from Beijing. But the year actually changes not with the phases of the moon, but with the solar calendar. In China, there's a system of 24 solar terms. Many of us are working with the tropical zodiac. That would be 12 solar turns. The sun through Sagittarius is about to end, and the sun through Capricorn is about to begin. The sunths, I like to call those. We could also divide the sun's path, the ecliptic, the circle, 360 degrees, into 24 slices of 15. And that's what the solar terms do. And it's each year at the beginning of spring, which is not equinox in that tradition's system. Equinox is actually Aries equinoxes, I'll call it east equinox, and I'll show you why, is actually the center of spring, which begins with the sun at the solar term that the tropical zodiac would describe as 15 degrees tropical Aquarius, right? And then 0 Aries is the midpoint. And then the seasons change when the sun gets to the next cross quarter, 15 degrees tropical Taurus. And then between 15 Taurus and 15 Leo is the summer with Midsummer's Eve, right? Sun into 0 Cancer, summer solstice in between. Now that's all Northern Hemisphere speak. China's in the Northern Hemisphere, friends, right? So most of us probably here in attendance today are doing seasons between solstice and equinox, solstice, equinox, solstice, with the cross quarters happening in between, like the sun gets to 0 Aquarius between Capricorn solstice and Aries equinox, right? At least in space, at least geometrically, he does. But other systems will use the equinox and solstice points as the center point of the season. And there's like a cool thing to that. So what I learned last year, and I was really happy to learn this, was that though, yes, there's this great ceremony from the shifting, for example, from the year of the rabbit to the year of the dragon at Chinese New Year, which is about a lunar phase thing. And so the silver calendar, the Earth, Moon, Sun calendar, the actual turning for those who are born, for example, in the year of the rabbit versus the year of the dragon, is at the beginning of spring, which is marked, to speak tropical zodiac language, with the sun at 15 degrees Aquarius. Melinda asks, have I checked out J.R.R. Tolkien's letter from Father Christmas? Brilliant drawings and whatnots that might help bring some inspiration. Awesome. Thank you for that tip. Okay. So we could put the sun at 15 Aquarius and say that's the beginning of spring, right? Many of us will know that as the middle of winter. Many folks in Australia will know that as the middle of summer, right? But regardless, the sun at 0 degrees Capricorn, the sun at 15 Aquarius, the sun at 0 Aries, the sun at 56 minutes Scorpio. Let's go. Like, that is a global moment. It's happening everywhere on Earth at the same time. For some, it will be during the day. For some, it will be during the night. And this image that we see here at 1:20 a.m. Pacific time on December 21st, 2024, if you're into that whole Gregorian trip, as I said before, it will be 11:20 p.m. on December 20th in Hawaii. Right? In Paris, I believe, certainly in Berlin, it will be daytime, not night. It will definitely be daytime in Paris then, right? But it's still a global moment, and it's a relationship between Earth and Sun. Sun on Gaia's spine. And I'm going to get back there. I just wanted to share that this beautiful image of this turning of the year, or turning of the season at least, or middle of the season if that's the game you prefer, this Capricorn solstice or solstice this year. As I look at different shapes in the chart, it has a lot of 5. Like there's a biquintile between Sun and Uranus, another one between Moon and Chiron, between Jupiter and the lunar nodes, between Neptune and Mercury, all 5th harmonic stuff, which is so wonderful because, as technical as I like to get, I really want to make this 5. If you speak harmonic astrology, that means playful, fun. Let's keep it creative and young. And let's keep it tree, y'all. Well, this would be an image of the tree, but I typically see it like this. Why? Do you know in Egypt, southern Egypt was called Upper Egypt, and northern Egypt was called Lower Egypt? This would have a lot to do with why the tree in Gaia's spine, the sword of our stone, are one and the same. So I'm looking at these ornaments and they kind of remind me of planets. And I'm looking at all of these twinkling lights and, well, they remind me of stars. And I'm looking at that star on top. And I want to bring you to the Christmas tree as seen from space. Bringing in the sun, we find the truth that there's always a line on Earth. It's called the terminator of shadow, and half of the Earth will always be day and half night, right? The world doesn't stop spinning for you. And so the good news is there's California with sunrise and sunreach, and now the sun is rising in Australia and Japan and now in India and the like, right? This relationship between sun and earth helps us see at least one line of the cross of matter. The image you're looking at right now, by the way, is definitely not one that's a model of this time of year. This would be an equinox time. Equinox, whether Aries equinox, East equinox, or Libra equinox, West equinox, that's the only time when the terminator, the shadow of the earth, is aligned with Gaia's spine, which is a poetic description that I utilize to describe Earth's rotational axis. And I like to call it the plane of our daily motion, of our daily rotation. Along that axis, which is the Christmas tree, the circle of matter. But apparently my slides did not want to play along with that particular narration today. Anyway, for me, this spine of Gaia, this sword of our stone, is the world tree. It's had many names throughout so many traditions, and I've come to believe that all of these traditions are referencing the axis of the earth. And by the way, whether you know the earth is a globe or you feel the earth is flat, there is still a center of the rotation, even if you feel the earth is not rotating and the sky is simply rotating about us. There is a center of the rotation. Now, this is how we experience the spinning earth outside at night, if clouds allow. In this case, like with a little help from time-lapse photography and star trails, I see 3 really important bright stars on the left of this frame before I get it spinning, by the way. Oh, those are reindeer. But I really want you to focus on this star that's at the center of it all. The Earth's pole is pointing in that direction. That is the North Celestial Pole. And in our day and age, we're very fortunate to have a star that is so closely aligned to that place in the heavens that the world tree or Earth's rotational axis points. And so that when we look there, we not only can align ourselves to the cardinal directions, because they are defined, created by Gaia's spine, by our rotational axis, right? It emanates from the heart of Earth and passes through the south terrestrial pole and north Santa's place to point to the celestial poles in the sky. I think we'll get to see that detailed in one of these slides in a bit. But it points to this celestial pole, which is the center of the spinning sky. And in our day and age, there is a pole star for we Northern Hemisphere observers called Polaris. It has not always had that name because of the Earth's third motion, which is called axial precession, where the axis and therefore the cardinal directions point in the heavens changes over the great year of about 26,000 years. But in our lifetime, in the Northern Hemisphere, we do have a star that is now known as North Star and is now known as Polaris, Pole Star. It won't always have that name. It has not always had that name. it's a good star to get to know. Well, how do you find it in the sky? We're going to go there to meet Santa's sleigh, but let me just suggest that perhaps this is the wreath. Maybe wreaths are just a very natural thing that you would do with the, limbs from the tree. They're super cool. But I also see, as I just kind of witness time and create a time lapse in my own consciousness when I sit outside and just sit north as I'm wont to do, this wreath of all the stars circling that middle star, that pole star. Polaris, right? Well, let's take a look at the spinning Earth from above Santa's place. It seems like it's a submerged layer, maybe, or Google Earth is just hiding the land mass that Santa and the elves' workshop is sitting upon, so that we can't get up to no good. But the North Pole of Earth, from this Google Earth point of view, looks pretty wet. Some say it's actually just a hole into the inner Earth, but that's probably a tale for another time. I think one worthy of exploration. Anyway, here we have this spinning Earth. I'm going to start it over just in case it would stop spinning before I could get through the rest. Notice that if I draw the equator in now, we get the circumpunct. It's the symbol we use to depict the sun. But when we bring the sun in, we're also going to find, from this spatial point of view, the cross of matter. This is the glyph we use to depict the earth in astrology, the cross of matter inside the circle of spirit. Are we not spiritual beings having an experience in matter? These are the types of things we want to teach, though gracefully and slowly and mystically, in the Solstice Mystery School. So half of Earth is always in shadow, half always in light, night and day. But we can also divide into quadrants. Like this is the place down at, what you see is the bottom of the frame where the sun is rising in this moment, rising in Scandinavia right now, about to rise in the UK, just did, and about to rise in Iceland, right? On the right side towards the sun, you get sun reach. That's midday. So now Scandinavia is experiencing the sun culminating at its height that day. Whereas here for, India at this time, the sun is setting. They're spinning from the light side into the dark side, like Vader, y'all. And the earth stopped. Anyway, just imagine that it's still spinning. And of course, on that opposite side from sun reach, the place of earth that's exactly opposite the sun in any given moment, that's where the midnight sun is happening in that moment, but only for that moment, because the earth does not stop spinning, friends. In astrology, by the way, sun at the ascendant are all the places aligned with that line pointing downward on your screen. So I don't know, White Horse, Canada, I guess. The sun is reaching for that place in the midst of the Atlantic Ocean, and for Greenland at this moment, stopped on the screen, it looks like the sun is at the descendant. That means sun setting in, Israel maybe at that time, and then the sun is at the root, at the place that I can't even see because it's in the shadow of the earth, which means night. Now, many of you will have looked at different traditions that celebrate the four cardinal directions. I just feel like I need to have the earth spinning as I get to this next piece. So, pardon me to take you through this experience once again. I'm going to have to click the button still several times. But I learned this one from NASA. Redundancy is built into every great space mission, So it's good to see the same thing thrice. you feel this quadrant nature, these 4 different ways. And so here perhaps might be the mysteries of the dreidel. And you know, those who spin the dreidel often are playing for gelt, which are these golden coins. Oh, that kind of looks like that thing on the right that we call the sun, right? And depending on which of the 4 faces the dreidel lands upon, you're going to take one sun or put one back, or you might take the whole thing or give all yours back in, right? Doesn't work exactly like that, but that helps me get the point across that taking one piece of light is like sunrise, taking it all is like noon or midday, putting one back is like sunset, and giving all of yours back is like the middle of the night. I could again compare this to, and this will be important when we find our ways back to, I don't know, the 12 days of Christmas. Sunrise is like spring and we take a little light. Midday is like summer when all the light is here because the sun is either culminating in the daily motion or closest to us in the yearly motion. Giving a little piece back at autumn time, at fall, right? And giving it all back at the winter time, going into the longest night, solstice, when the sun will be reborn. And that's right around the time when this bearded fella comes and brings the toys. This guy who lives at the North Pole. The one place on Earth where Polaris is directly overhead. And by the way, if you go outside and you align your heart to North Star, to Polaris, then you are facing Santa's place. You know, the truth is, if you go out and look at the sun right now, your body is facing wherever the sun is directly overhead on Earth. And by the way, since we're just about at Capricorn solstice, that means the sun is above the Tropic of Capricorn, as we will see. As you face Polaris, your body is aligned to Earth's North Pole. That star is above, that star at the celestial pole is above the terrestrial pole, Santa's place. Now here is Santa's sleigh in the sky. Can you see it? Right there. This asterism, this part of Ursa Major, this part of the Big Bear that many of us know as the Big Dipper. It's important to know that the Dipper points north. That message was tucked away in some interesting songs that helped people know they could work with the drinking gourd to find their way north and to safety. Follow the drinking gourd. Or perhaps you've heard of the song Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. That might tell you the best time of the year to go. Because the Big Dipper, the drinking gourd, the sweet chariot can help us tell time. The daily time can help us keep the hours and also can help us understand more about where we are in the year. And for Northern Hemisphere kids, Santa's sleigh will be one of the great entrances to learning sacred time and how we can connect to sacred time and keep the days and the years by working with the stars. And in older time, that weird long handle of the Dipper was not a long tail of a bear, which itself is strange. Bears don't have long tails. Here's an image from Stellarium astronomy software where they're showing us some imagery, I believe, from the Babylonian tradition, where interestingly, you get to see this herdsman. And then the wagon or the wain being another name for the Dipper, the wagon, Santa's sleigh. And there's a train of stars, the stars at the handle of the Dipper, which I see as reindeer, And that continues on that same general trajectory or arc through stars of the herdsman constellation, Bootes, to the big and bright, beautiful, super giant red-nosed star called Arcturus. Arcturus, the red-nosed reindeer. Now, the sky doesn't stop spinning for Santa. What star do they spin about? We can follow the arc of the dipper or of the wagon to Arcturus, follow the arc to Arcturus, but we can also work in this direction to follow Polaris. The Pointer Sisters, I like to call the two stars at the end of the dipper's cup, because they point to Polaris, pole star. And just as it is with all of the stars in the sky, they are spinning because the Earth is spinning. They are spinning about that pole, about the world tree. That is the star on the top of the Christmas tree. And we're going to see that Rudolph and his train of reindeer, who now let him play the reindeer games, let's keep it 5e, he pulls Santa all the way around the world on Christmas night. Now, by the way, he does it every night. Okay. But there's actually a particularly interesting thing about Christmas that I don't want to take our time with right now. I just encourage you to learn to read time by working with the dipper in the sky if you're in the northern hemisphere like I am in the southern hemisphere. There's other constellations for us to work with to find the south celestial pole, like the Southern Cross and pointer stars from the leg of the other leg of Centaurus. And those hopefully could actually add to another mythic tradition where we could honor whoever lives at the South Pole. So if you ever wondered how Santa could get all the way around the globe in 24 hours, well, he has to. Okay, happy Solstice to you. Yeah, here's where I just thought maybe we'd explore a little bit more of the astronomy for you. Why not? We're here together. So you see that cross of matter, the equator, which is the plane of the day, the plane of our daily rotation. I like to call the equator the cross of matter because the spinning of Earth brings us such hits as sunrise and sunset is really completely an earthly thing, right? So the equator and then the rotational axis, making this earth glyph, this cross of matter, right? The rotational axis I see is the world tree. Now, it might be a hemispheric thing to say the trunk is in the south and the star is in the north, isn't it? However, the Earth, because the sun is moving north through space, look up the apex of the sun's way if you want to learn more about that. So there's something about south being the trunk of the tree and north the star, or it was said by some of the southern hemisphere wisdom traditions that the south is the stern of the ship and the north is the bow. That's an interesting thing. Regardless, in our day and age, we have a star at the north celestial pole, but we don't have one at the south celestial pole. Oh, actually, I see what's happening here is we're taking it to this time now. In one moment each year, what is a year? Earth orbiting the sun. In only one moment each year does Earth's south axis lean towards the sun. And that is the sun ingressing tropical Capricorn. You can see that why I call this Solstice. It's the Earth's south pole leaning towards the sun. When the sun ingresses tropical Capricorn, the sun shines directly above Earth's Tropic of Capricorn. So when you hear siderealists and such say, no, the tropical zodiac's all wrong, it doesn't work like it used to, the signs and the constellations are not aligned, and there's some truth to that. We'll explore that just a little bit. You might want to ask them why they don't call the Tropic of Capricorn the Tropic of Sagittarius. What? Excuse me. I'll get back to that. Anyway, the Tropic of Capricorn is the southern bounds of the sun. If you've heard that term out of bounds in astrology, it means a planet that's either south of the Tropic of Capricorn or north of the Tropic of Cancer, because those are the bounds of the sun. They are the tropics, which come from the Greek tropikos. And at solstice, which comes from the Latin for the sun stops moving south and it turns around tropicos and then it moves north for 6 months, all due to Earth's tilt between the plane of day and the plane of the year. Let's watch this a bit. So the plane of day is the equator, but that's not the plane of the year. What is the plane of the year? That's Earth's orbital path about the sun. Yes? The ecliptic. And the equator and the ecliptic are tilted at an angle of about 23.5 degrees. In our day and age, that changes over a great cycle of about 44,000 years, we think. Really, 23.4 degrees is more accurate, but if you honor that that's 23.4, then you have to honor in the other direction, it's 66.6, and nobody wants to say that shit. I will say that this means the Arctic circles are 66.6 degrees north and south of the equator, just as the tropics of Cancer, and here shown Capricorn, are 23.44 degrees north and south of the equator, respectively. Okay, well, the Earth doesn't stop spinning, the Earth doesn't stop orbiting. There's really only one precise moment each year, that's the sun ingressing tropical Capricorn, when the sun shines directly above the Tropic of Capricorn, and then we move along, right? This is the reason for the seasons. There's summer, and here's autumn, or fall, and falling back to winter time, to speak northern hemisphere, okay? Because as you can see here, with the sun ingressing tropical Capricorn and therefore shining above the Tropic of Capricorn, it's maximum light in the southern hemisphere, maximum darkness in the northern hemisphere, summer solstice south, winter solstice north, right? Well, let's bring in the constellations of the zodiac, which, by the way, they don't circle the sun, they circle the Earth. How do we on Earth experience our annual orbit about the light, which is called the secondary motion, right? Earth orbiting the sun, we experience by witnessing sun orbit us. And the constellations of zodiac are simply the 12 star groups which embrace that ecliptic plane, which embrace the sun's path as seen from Earth. Now, importantly, you'll never see that the stars that the sun is aligned to. It's like, I think modern astrology kind of forgot that. And it's why the old zodiacs are all lunar, because you can actually watch the moon moving through the stars. The solar year was tracked in different ways, in earthly ways, watching where the sun rises and sets on the horizon. When the sun ingresses tropical Capricorn, when it's furthest from California, where I live, because it's at the southern bounds, which is the Tropic of Capricorn, the sun rises most south of east and it sets most south of west. Now, a convenient truth is that's also true in Peru. 0 Capricorn, the Sagittarius Capricorn cusp, is the most south point. It rises most south of east and sets most south of west. Everywhere on Earth, except for places north of the Arctic Circle where it doesn't rise at all, okay? What's different between California and Peru at this time of the year, of course, is that in Peru, that sun at the Tropic of Capricorn means the sun is closest to them and therefore highest in their sky, just as a building appears to be highest as you walk towards it and smallest when you walk away from it. Well, in this case, the sun is walking north for 6 months. I'm going to talk California towards me until it gets to its highest height, 0 Cancer, summer solstice, northern hemisphere. And then it walks away from me for 6 months, right? Until it gets to its greatest depth or lowest midday height. That's the sun ingressing tropical Capricorn, right? So like back to the old Babylonian zodiac, you'll see like lunar star signs, at least in its origin, but you'll also see teachings about how to keep the days and the year with the sundial and with the meridian calendar, which uses the gnomon of the sundial to track the length of the midday shadow throughout the year. Because when the sun is lowest, as it is now in the northern hemisphere, right, this is a very important part of the solstice mysteries, the midday shadow, which is the shortest shadow of the day, is the longest midday shadow of the year. Whereas at summer solstice, and the sun is so high, the midday shadow is much shorter, right? The high sun casts a shorter shadow. There's places on Earth where the sun can actually go overhead. Those are only between the tropics, because the tropics are the bounds of the sun. They're not the bounds of the moon. It's a very important year to study that. We're in a great lunar maximum time in the 18.6 year lunar standstill cycle. Today is not the time for that. But I would just say that the moon also, regardless that she's not tied to the bounds of the sun, which are the tropics, she still gets furthest south and furthest north every. We're back. Cool. We didn't do that every month, right? Every tropical month, the moon gets around the zodiac every 27.321 days. I haven't seen this from anyone yet. Would someone just please write, yes, you're live in the chat? Because I'm wondering if this has to be part one, and I continue another time with part two. Checking in. Oh, Winter, thank you so much. And how appropriate to hear yes from Winter. Although I guess for the next few days would have been more appropriate to hear yes from Autumn. But I'm not sure if there's an Autumn here. Samantha? Okay, anyway, let's just be where we were. Look on this screen, and hey, obviously this is not drawn to scale, and it's kind of the best I can do. It's better than the old ones I used to draw. I just want to honor that, like, at this time, in our day and age of precession, when sun ingresses tropical Capricorn, or let's say moon, because you can actually see that happening depending on the phase, the sun's not aligned to the sea goat constellation. It's actually, in our day and age, aligned to the great river of stars near the galactic center, the galactic cross, where the Milky Way crosses the ecliptic. It's one of the most important truths of your incarnational time, the sun on the cross, and I have to leave that there. But when folks say, like, hey, your zodiac is wrong, then when the sun's actually in I'll call the Archer, they'll say Sagittarius constellation, so this is actually Sagittarius, just ask them why they don't call that band of terrestrial latitude about 23.5 degrees south of the equator the Tropic of Sagittarius. Because tropic comes from tropicos for turnaround, which happens for the sun at solstice. The sun stops and turns around. The sun's on the Tropic of Capricorn when the sun ingresses tropical Capricorn. And notice again that this is the solstice, the southern bounds of the sun's journey. It's Earth's south pole leaning towards the sun. Like so many sacred systems of ancient wisdom traditions, the tropical zodiac is a directional thing. It's a directional device, and I will argue that the energies of its signs are directionally aligned, that there's something very important about southness that aligns with Capricorn. Now, in the Northern Hemisphere experience, we also get the truth that, like a goat, the sun now, from its midday depth, the winter solstice, right, longest midday shadow of the year, is going to start climbing the mountain. But goats come down from the mountain too, right? And that's happening in the southern hemisphere, where, of course, zero Capricorn sun, tropical Capricorn sun, means the height of the light for the year, right? Summer solstice time. And then the sun will start to descend that mountain, quote unquote. All right, well, let's watch a season's worth for the northern hemisphere ascent And you'll just see that the overhead sun is going to move from the Tropic of Capricorn down there 23.5 degrees-ish south of the equator and start moving north until equinox, when the sun is shining directly above Earth's equator. Right? There's something about Easter and equinox. I'll show that to you, I think, in just a bit. Let's watch this next season: Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. Well, sun ingressing Cancer, so at the Gemini Cancer cusp. Sun ingresses tropical Cancer. Sun shines directly above Earth's Tropic of Cancer, 23.5-ish degrees north of Earth's equator, right? And these, we don't want to do it just like this. This is also academic, but these are parts of the Solstice Mystery School. More importantly, helping kids see that the sun sets over there at winter solstice and sets over there at summer solstice. I'm happy to say we do that in this house. I don't make some big deal about it. I don't need to teach all the astronomy behind it until I'm asked. But Koa certainly knows that we can't see the sunset at his birth time, he's Cancer sun sign, unless we're looking from his room. And we can't see the morning sun unless we're looking from the room of the Scorpio crew, who is me and Scorpiona. Anyway, it's a convenient thing about our house. So from here, we get the sun, Cancer, Leo, Virgo to equinox time. At equinox, the sun will shine directly above Earth's equator. Now I call this Libra ingress west equinox, and there's a reason why the Libra glyph looks like the setting sun. Sorry if you hadn't seen that before, because it's hard to come back from. Anyway, this final season, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius sun, now bringing us back to solstice, Earth's south pole, leaning towards the light. Sun ingresses tropical Capricorn and shines above Earth's Tropic of Capricorn. All right. Are we going to do that again? Yeah, we're going to watch that motion from another point of view. So now we're zoomed way out. We're looking at Earth. We're way past the sun. Definitely not to scale. The sun would be too huge to see the Earth, okay? But this is a time of the sun at the cross. And I mean the year cross. There's a day cross. That's called the sun crossing the horizon, sunrise, and also sunset. Right? This is a year cross. A cross of what? A cross of the equator and the ecliptic. The plane of the day, that's Earth's spin, that's the equator, and the plane of the year, that's Earth's orbit, that's the ecliptic, or from Earth's point of view, that's the plane and path that the sun travels in its yearly dance about us. Now you'll notice that down beneath this illustration, you see the sine wave. It's a sine wave of declination. You'll see on the x-axis the signs of the zodiac, well, at least Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, and back to Aries. And then on the y-axis, you get the tropics of Cancer at the top, 23.5 degrees north of the equator, which is the line. Okay, and then 23.5 degrees south of the equator, the Tropic of Capricorn, right? And now we'll see the sun reaching its northern extreme, sun ingress tropical Cancer. That point towards which Earth's North Pole and the star at the top of the Christmas tree, if you'd like, is always leaning. Zero Cancer. This isn't about constellational crab, by the way. It's the most northern point of the sun's path of the zodiac. It's closest to the North Star. That's kind of like a revelation I've just had in the last couple months being outside. It's a really hard one I've found to photograph or show in my videos. Earth's North Pole leans forever towards this point we call zero Cancer. So when the sun ingresses tropical Cancer, it shines above the Tropic of Cancer. Okay. You know, when I said I had to rearrange some slides before we began, they were supposed to be here right now. Regardless, let's just watch the sun, quote unquote, falling into the southern hemisphere. That, of course, falling would only be from the northern hemisphere's point of view. I should rewind and just say it falls from its height. In the northern hemisphere, the height of the light is the most northern point of the sun's path. That's the Tropic of Cancer. It's closest to me here in California, right? And then every day the sun will fall, starting slowly and then quite rapidly in the fall until it gets to the southern extreme. So here's the sun at 0 Libra, west equinox. Why would I call it that? And then here's the sun at 0 Capricorn, right? Southern extreme, and then it crosses this cross of the plane of day, equator, the plane of year. There's many zodiacs. There's a constellational zodiac, or many zodiacs. Constellations are totally arbitrary. Sidereal zodiacs aligned to a star, and then dividing the circle into 12 equal slices. Why 12? This is the only zodiac that is not arbitrary, because this point of the crossing of the equator and the ecliptic is just absolutely astronomically defined. And it happens to be due east of the center of the Earth. That's a weird thing to say because it's not east of New York or LA. But there is a global north, North Pole. There is a global south, South Pole. And that means there are also global east and west. And those cardinal directions are the cusps of the cardinal signs in the tropical zodiac, which is the only zodiac that also considers the plane of the day, the equator. Not to say sidereal astrologers or constellational astrologers don't understand the primary motion, or some of them do, right? And the spinning of the Earth, or the spinning of the sky if you prefer, or both. That's where I roll. But it's the tropical zodiac that is keyed to the cardinal directions: 0 Capricorn, cardinal south; 0 Aries, cardinal east. Easter and the sun on the cross, which happened at Passover time, right? The sun every year will get due east of Earth. That's the 0 Aries degree. And that's why beginning a year at 0 Aries might make sense, even globally, though it's spring and, you know, the resurrection of the sun, light overcoming night for the northern hemisphere alone at this time. And of course, in the southern hemisphere, this means autumnal equinox and night's going to overcome daylight, right? It's still that this is the point that's due east of the center of the Earth, where we all connect. And so Easter, which comes from Oester, the goddess of the dawn, east, right? And it's important to know that that also happens at Passover time. Yeah, this is all slide confusion. So let me get this back on. Where did we want to be? Good enough. Okay. I got to get that shared on your screen. Oh, hold on, friends. Technical-ish. Retrograde. Play in window, some of these buttons, one of these ones, some of that stuff, that buttons. Okay, there we go. Sun on the cross. Oh, redundancy is built into every great space mission. Anyway, the declination, which is north or south of the equator, is 0 at equinox. It's maximum declination at Capricorn or solstice time. And then 0 at the Aries equinox as well. Holy moly, people, really? We don't get Passover? In my attempt to make this all right, I took out some of my favorite slides to show you. Well, I can just share them with you in Word, because there's a lot of other words I want to share. And words tell 1,000 pictures, or something like that. So you likely know that Christ was crucified at Passover time. So the story goes, right? They're in Jerusalem. You kick the money changers out of the temple. There's something about kicking stuff out of the temple that will be important here too. His disciples ask him where to prepare the Passover supper. Something intriguingly astronomical or astrological here. Christ tells him to go into the city where they will see a man bearing a pitcher of water, to follow him into the house in which he dwells. You know, we used to call the signs the houses, and the houses the places. So that would be the sign of the water bearer, the sign of Aquarius, really speaking about the dawning of the age of Aquarius. If you know my work, you'll know that I've decoded that on the next page, when asked to publicly blaspheme so they can justify his crucifixion, Christ is made to agree that he has called himself the Son of the Beloved, the Son of God, the Son of the Mighty One. And he says, yes, I am, and you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven. Well, what I've decoded, and this is, I'm sure, painted on the ceiling of the U.S. Capitol building in the apotheosis of George Washington, that this is about our day and age. It's a sun on a very different type of cross, the cross of the ecliptic, the plane of the year, and the Milky Way band. So ecliptic, solar system, neighborhood, Milky Way band, galaxy, city. It's happening now. It's the most important thing that we are experiencing. All the Plutos, Neptunes, etc. is happening within that greater context. But I just want to leave that there now, speak more about the sun and the cross of the year. So Passover time, think about it, the ecliptic, the path of the sun, passes over the equator here at the east equinox point, 0 Aries. Why would that be associated with rams? Because that constellation that used to host that point in our sky looks anything like a ram? No. In fact, in the Babylonian, it was the hired man, who might have been a shepherd, the hireling. The ram kind of came late to the zodiac. I wonder if it happened in Egypt, because of course in Egypt they had ram-headed images of the sun way, way, way back. Why would that be? I believe it's this. If you go and look at the eastern sky, and especially if you do so near the equator, here 38 degrees north of the equator, I have to tilt my head 38 degrees to see it most perfectly. But the sky rises like the Aries glyph, the eastern sky does. And at the equator, if you're watching east, that stars that rise south of east head to the south, and north of east head to the north. And then like the ram's horns, they hook back around to set in the west behind you. And I believe it's why we have ram imagery with the eastern imagery all over the place. Of course, there's that archetypal image of charging ahead and all the things that, at least especially a vernal or spring equinox might imply. Well, in Jerusalem, this was spring equinox. And it is the resurrection of the light. But so these are things that also want to come into the solstice mystery school. All right. The light, the sun, and many things. How about many planets? Or what about planetus, which means wandering star? So the planets traditionally are the ones that we can watch wandering through the stars. You know, the sun's the only one of the traditional 7 that we actually can't see wandering through the stars. You can work with heliacal rising and setting stars to know more about where the sun is in any given moment of time. But of course, you'll go blind trying to see the stars that currently host the sun's travel. That's a very important thing. Sun is great mystery. It's the lunar zodiacs that go way back, because of course we can see the moon moving through the stars. Moon, mother, Mar, something about the seas, Mary. Do you know there were 3 Marys at the crucifixion? Who are the 3 Marys? Where's the magical moon dial? I would suggest they are about the triple-headed goddess. This one kind of looks like maiden, 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 but it's not. It's maiden, mother, crone, right? What would they be? Well, the maiden would be the young moon, the mother moon at fullness, and the crone, the elder moon. So maiden waxing, mother full, crone waning. Maybe we should split this up into thirds. Some of the ancients did. And I believe that Christ is the sun. Like, I mean the sun in our sky. So when you hear about the sun walking on water, I bet you've seen it. I bet you've seen the sun rise and how the legs of the sun are on the body of the water. Anyway, hopefully this isn't just blasphemy in your school. And I believe these three Marys are different images of the moon. I'm not the first to have suggested that one. Well, three Marys, let's talk, I guess, about the three kings and the 12 days of Christmas. And the 12 apostles. Why do we have 12 signs in the zodiac, right? So the 12 apostles would be the 12 signs that the sun is moving through. Signs, by the way, are not constellational. Hopefully I've shown that to you. They're not even equal divisions of time, and that might bring us to some beautiful truths around January 1st as a start date for a year. I'm not sure. But they are equal divisions of space. So we take this ecliptic circle, which is clearly astronomically cut in four places: the east point, 0 tropical Aries; the north point, 0 tropical Cancer; the west point, 0 tropical Libra; and the south point, 0 tropical Capricorn. That fourness is indisputable. We could take those four and then just cut those in half and make 8, right? And we would get that place 15 tropical Aquarius, which is the beginning of spring, the sun going there, and the Chinese solar terms I mentioned before. They're actually not dividing the 4 into 8, 16, 32. So they're not doing a binary thing. They're dividing 24. Where does the 24 come from? Why do we have 24 hours in the day? I appreciate seeing one of you say, popping in to say great 12/12 show right on 6 days ago on December 12th. I did a little pop-up to speak about the creation, creating in 12ness. Now the 12 signs might come from the old 12-month calendars that were working with the phases of the moon. There's a bit of a challenging thing there because there's actually 12 and a third phases per year. We find 12ness also in harmony. The harmonic series creates a 12-fold division of a musical octave between the first and second harmonic, and I don't want to lose ourselves in that nerd space right now either, but that all wants to be part of the Solstice Mystery Schools and very intentional songs that we learn to sing with the kids and play on the instruments to honor the harmonics, the vibrations, okay? But 12ness lives there. 12ness, I feel, is most clear and certainly most precise when we look to the so-called seed of life. This is how the zodiac is born. 6 circles about one, the 7 days of creation, some would say, that create a 6-petaled flower inside and 6-petaled flower outside. Watch that 12/12 video if you want to see more of that sacred geometry and creation creating in 12s. So we have these 12 apostles, right, hanging out with the sun that we call signs. And the sun moves through them in about 30 days. Each of the signs more like 30.44 on average. And importantly, it is an average because all orbits are not circular, but rather elliptical. So this brings us to January 1st, maybe in an interesting way. It is at that time in our day and age, each year, when Earth is closest to the sun. And therefore, Earth is moving fastest when the sun is in Capricorn, Sagittarius Capricorn. We are furthest from the sun. That's called aphelion, around July 4th in the Gregorian calendar in our day and age. And when Earth is furthest from the sun at aphelion in July or Gemini Cancer kind of zone, especially, the Earth is moving slower in our orbital path, and therefore the sun is moving slower in our zodiac. We often teach the sun moves like 1 degree per day. It's a 360 degree zodiac circle, 365-ish, 366 days in a year, right? So it's about 1 degree per day. Well, at this time of the year, and especially in Sagittarius Capricorn, and especially at January 1st, the sun is moving more than 1 degree per day, and especially at July 4th, the sun is moving at its slowest rate, less than 1 degree per day, about 57 arc minutes. Check it out. Right now, the sun's moving like 1 degree in a minute per day. So it's pretty close to 1 degree. It doesn't fluctuate as much as the moon, whose elliptical path brings her close to Earth and far from Earth every month, every anomalistic month anyway, the moon Lilith month, but maybe that's a tale for another time. We were talking 3 Marys. Well, I want to talk 3 Kings. All right. So if you come from Spain or many of the other places that align to more of a Spanish way to celebrate this time of the year, gifts get unwrapped more on Tres Reyes, on 3 Kings, than on Christmas Day. Well, when is that? That is Epiphany, right? So, 6 turtle doves or whatever and a partridge in a pear tree, like that's the consumerism 12 days of Christmas, which lead into Christmas. So every day I can go out and buy my love another thing and prove my love to her because I bought you a bunch of stuff. Yikes. Well, back in the day, no. The 12 days of Christmas, and maybe those 12 days have something to do with the 12 signs. Maybe the 12 hours do as well, and the 12 moons. Anyway, those would start at Christmas time and then lead to Epiphany. So from the birth of the sun, and the birth of the sun might better be described as solstice, on the Gregorian thing, typically December 21st, not the 25th. But it does, like if you're keeping the shadow calendar or the horizon calendar, it's very hard to distinguish between like December 18th to December 24th, 5th. Like they're all at the most south rising. Since I'm pointing over here because that's where Solstice Hill is. Why do I call it that? Because for me, that's where the Capricorn solstice sun sets. If things set over there, I can tell they're out of bounds, by the way. And then there's a particular tree here that the sun sets into, I call the birthing tree. Why? Because it's the longest night, and then the sun will be reborn, sing a Christmas song, right? And now daylight will start moving back until its resurrection at east equinox. That's Northern Hemisphere experience, right? But we should know these things and let's keep them mythical. And why not tell these tales through Santa and the elves or through the solar being in 12 tribes or 12 disciples or whatever you'd like? We should live in myth, but also not get lost to it and certainly not have wars because of it. I just had a really interesting image of the Santa Wars. Well, I'm sure those movies are like in the theaters right now, probably. Okay, so what are Tres Reyes, 3 Kings? Well, that's of course when the 3 wise men came and brought the gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh, right? I don't know if you heard Maya cry right then, but to find the crying babe in the manger. By the way, there's a place in the heavens called the manger. And there's an interesting story that's told about those 3 kings following the bright star. Well, the 3 kings are Orion's belt. They're still called that. And you can draw a line from those 3 kings through Sirius. Some suggest it points to the priestess constellation. I use priestess to differentiate constellation, priestess from sign Virgo, because constellations and signs are different things. But maybe to the birth of the sun at this time of the year. I don't know that it works so well, and that one would be something to explore through imagery. But having tales like that are fantastic and can really help us meet the movements of the sky and celebrate and align ourselves to the marriage of heaven and earth, which is, of course, the thing that I most want to contribute to the Solstice Mystery School. What do you want to contribute? All right. I meant to mention here Right. Well, let's just say that January 1st is between Christmas and Epiphany. So maybe that's why January 1st. Maybe January 1st, because that's when we're closest to the sun. I don't think that was known when the Julian calendar was defined, or even when the Gregorian calendar reform came around. Maybe then in the 16th century, maybe all the way back to the Julian. I'm not sure. I mean, probably actually, because I did want to mention this too, something new in my awareness in trying to explore when did my daughter actually turn 6 months old. I put on another reflection on that while driving yesterday. And it might support solstice over equinox for a beginning of the year. So let me explain. The ancients, we see this in Geminos, who was a Hellenistic astronomer. They were trying to tackle the weird issue with the truth that the seasons of the year vary in time. Like the time between equinox and northstice, all right, and northstice and westquinox, and westquinox and solstice and equinox, they're equinox, they're different periods of time, up to like 91 days and down to 88 or something like that. Gemino's solution is intriguing, or him sharing a solution of the day. And this was before the heliocentric or sun-centered awareness. It was before, more importantly than that, actually, because you could go either way with that, the elliptical nature of orbits, and why at times in the orbit, planet fast and planet slow, or sun fast, sun slow, or moon fast, moon slow. Now, because the sun is closest to Earth and therefore moving fastest through our zodiac at solstice time of year, January 1st, and because it's furthest away, July 4th, around northstice, or sun ingressing tropical Cancer time, then starting at solstice and going to solstice gives you two seasons that are indeed equal to, or nearly equal to, half a year, half as many days in the 365.242. Because if you start at the slow point and you go to the fast point, or if you start at the fast point and you go to the slow point, then the mid period of that time is going to be the average speed, right? And so your 6 months, or 6 signs, 6 sunths, are going to be about half of the year. 366-day year is easier to divide by 2. You get 183 days. And there's about 183 days between Capricorn solstice and Cancer solstice, between Cancer solstice and Capricorn solstice. Why? Because the equinox points are average speed. Okay. Whereas if you start your year at sun ingressing 0 Aries, as many will, then your half year is going to be longer between that 0 Aries and 0 Libra than the second half of the year between sun at 0 Libra and sun at 0 Aries. Why? Because the slowest point is around sun at 0 Cancer. So if that's happening in like the middle of your half year, that's a really slow, long half year. So more than 183 days. Whereas sun between 0 Libra and 0 Aries is going to be the short half of the year, less than 183 days, because you get the fastest sun now. This is probably beyond the scope, but these are the things I trip about, and things that I want to contribute to the Solstice Mystery School, because I'm so interested in preserving the ancient astronomical wisdom. I'm interested in updating that with some of the modern findings, like that star and that Orion's sword beneath the belt, or perhaps the phallus of Osiris. Is the Orion Nebula? Now, astronomers would smack me for saying this because they don't think it's nearly old enough, but I think that's where our sun was born. And that brings us back to the turning of the ages, but we never really got there in the first place, and we will not today. Okay. But that's something I really want to bring awareness to. Most importantly, just to say, yes, it is happening now. You have incarnated for this. Now, what do we do about this? We become better human beings. And so adding the mystery tradition, the mystical training, and keeping it mythic. Bring me your elves with their toy shop. Right? Keeping it mythic is the way that we will bring this to the kids. So let's write more stories, not take them away. And when there's a shift in consciousness and you say, hey, that thing you told me, I heard it's not true. You say, yes, you're ready for level 2, right? Not, yeah, my bad. We were just lying so you could have fun. You're ready for level 2. And when there's an awakening at the end of that one, now it's time for level 3. And you are ready to step from elf status to Santa status, or whatever it wants to be called. Okay. Pebbles writes, Orion greets me right outside my front door. Cool. Well, if that's happening at Orion and Rise, and your front door is facing east because Orion's on the equator in our day and age, and that's one of the most important truths of the turning of the age, the long third cycle of Earth, the axial precession of the equinoxes, and I could go on and on and on. I did just want to mention that dreidel play where we were before, and comparing the seasons of the day to the seasons of the year, and me wondering if, one of the most, I'll just say, like Jewish New Year, Hebrew New Year is around the autumn of the year, at least from the Northern Hemisphere point of view, like Israel. I believe that is in correspondence with the day beginning at sunset, because that's where we see the young moon. And this brings us back to this comparison of days and years. Sunrise is like spring, midday is like summer, sunset is like autumn, midnight is like winter. Well, if you're familiar with the astronomical or astrological technique called secondary progressions, where we compare days to years, that will all sound like familiar territory, perhaps, or maybe give you the energetic foundation of why that can work. Well, there are also many different types of fractal time progression scenarios. One would be relating a day to a lunation. So maybe the 12 days of Christmas could kind of be extrapolated into the 12 lunations in a year, or maybe simply the 12 months. And so the first day of Christmas would be Aries. Maybe it's Capricorn. The second day of Christmas is Aquarius, the third Pisces, or the third is Gemini, if you prefer, you modern astrologers, you who like the natural zodiac, the zero Aries wheel. And there's a reason why. I promise I would share this. Well, zero Aries is due east of the center of Earth, where we all connect, and therefore it works like a global ascendant, which is why, by the way, the turning of the ages and the shift from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius is a thing in the first place. All right. So I think, utilizing the 12 days of Christmas instead of some consumerism thing as an opportunity to teach the 12 archetypes, or maybe in another year, the 12 houses or whatever, could be incredibly convenient. Okay. There's 2 more things I want to do. There's so many more, but today I'm going to honor that it is 12/18/24. If I leave the 20 out in the Gregorian calendar anyway. But I also wanted to speak about the Hanukkah versus the menorah. So the Hanukkah, right, has 9 branches. One that's used to light the 8 candles. It's celebrating the miracle of Hanukkah, right, which is when the Maccabees got realigned the temple, took the temple back, cleared it out. But there was only one jar of oil that had not been tainted. So they were only going to be able to light the temple menorah for one day. And one of the great miracles of Hanukkah was that one day's worth of oil lasted for 8. Right? So much more to say about that, but there you go. Interesting tale, this. Well, the Hanukkah is celebrating that, but the temple menorah, the lantern that they lit with that 1 day's worth of oil that lasted 8 days, had 7 branches, with one in the center, the long one. The sun? Okay. And what would the others be? Earth, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Interior on one side, exterior on the other side. So I love the opportunity to work with the menorah, probably maybe more. Well, the 9 helped me get into number magic play and kind of Pythagorean playness in a base 10 number system, which I like to do. But the 7 with the Moon, Mercury, Venus, or maybe we say Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, with the sun in the center that lights them all. For when I look to Saturn in the sky, I'm looking at Saturn's reflection of that one light called sun. Maybe I'll call it the Christ. I really like that opportunity to work with the 7 and the 12. 7, of course, in the tradition of astrology being the 7 planetus, the 7 wandering lights, including the luminaries, moon and sun, and the visible planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and the 12 being, of course, the 12 tribes. I'm sorry, the 12 disciples. No, the 12 signs, right. The 12 equal divisions of the ecliptic path from the crossing of the plane of day and plane of year, equator and ecliptic, respectively. The sun on the cross there, each year, the resurrection. Okay. Well, the last thing I wanted to share was this, because I think this idea of bringing the wisdom tradition to the kids and needing to, well, on one level, I don't love the term, but gamify it, right? And just kind of sneak it in. So if you're the type who likes to leave cookies for Santa and carrot for reindeer, what if, hey, Santa really likes snowflaked cookie shapes? That's just how he rolls. He's from the North Pole. He's rolling down here to California. It's all warm. Like, that's not Santa's jam, He's got to take a bunch of layers off, and like reindeer, we can add tails, right? So snowflake shape. Well, how do you make a snowflake? And you're going to need the compass and the rule, the 2 tools of the sacred geometer. And you're going to need to create the seed of life. If you want your snowflake to be completely regular and symmetric, which snowflakes typically don't do because nature, and freehand drawing is wonderful and encouraging that. But I would love to show kids how to draw the flower of life. 6 around 1 to make 7. 6 in, 6 out to make 12. 24 equal spaces, the hours of the day. Oh, and it's 6, 18, 24. Oh, right, because there's 1 and then 12. I can make another ring of circles around this. Oh, that would be 12 circles around the 6. 18 circles around those 12. So happy 12, 18, 24. If, by the way, I get another ring around the 18 that I need to make the flower of life, then those 24 circles let me create the fruit of life, which I need to draw Metatron's cube, which I need if I want to bring in the so-called platonic solids, right? The tetrahedron, the hexahedron, which you may know as cube, the icosahedron, dodecahedron, and I skip the octahedron. Why would I skip 8? Well, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and the whole binary trips takes us in another place in the way that the zodiac life is, 6, 6, 6 being 12, 6, 6, 6 being, 18, 6, 6, 6, 6 being 24, and the like. And I want to show kids this. And these are all things, and so are, by the way, the one becoming two, and the circle of spirit, and the crescent of soul, and the cross of matter, and much more. It's kind of like the very roots we should all know, like hexagons are the bestagons, if we really want to get inside the astrology. And then if kids choose to learn astrology from there, they will have a framework that none of us were given. That is, unless you study at the School of Astrology. No, I'm not that pretentious to say that, but I will be teaching Sacred Astronomy for adults very soon. So I hope you will please be on my mailing list if you want to stay in touch about the Solstice Mystery School as it develops, and we'll start doing so for real now that I have a baby in the house. Next year she'll be 1.5, and then 2.5, like that. And so it's going to start happening kind of quick. I'm wondering when Koa, her brother, who's now 9 years old, is going to move from, I'll call it snowflake to elf, maybe. There's going to be a great awakening he experiences, likely with some anger, by the way. But we're going to keep magic alive through not just let it die, as it's so wont to do. That's really why the Christmas Mystery School, and now I want to call it the Solstice Mystery School, and bring in traditions, old and new. Like hanging ornaments on the tree, what is that and why? Like the feast, what is that and why? Like gathering with the family to stay warm, what is that and why, right? We can take this way back before the traditions in the context of religions of our day. Okay. Anyway, please visit GeminiBrett.com. You can sign up for my mailing list there. If you're watching this on YouTube, by the way, you'll find some of these links in the descriptions. GeminiBrett.com will let you sign up for the mailing list. You can click on GeminiBrett.com/sessions and book a reading for me if you'd like to support the work. GeminiBrett.com/constellations, or clicking the community tab there will bring you to a page that will teach you about Constellations, the School of Astrology's membership community, which is amazing. I see many familiar names. Many of you are there. We have a different teaching every week. This week we have two. Amala Hall, in just a few hours at 4 p.m. Pacific, will be teaching astro-herbalism, as she does for each month, planet-planet correspondences for Sagittarius. On Friday, we are going to have our next monthly or sunthly, really, astro embodiment practice shared by the amazing Alyssa Luna of In the Moon Den. Alyssa, I saw you here earlier, not sure if you're still about. And then Alyssa is an amazing candle maker and candle worker. Yum. This one's called Divine Fire. Check her out at inthemoondens.com. And she'll be leading us also through a solstice ceremony. Her astro embodiment practice in Constellations will happen this Friday, Venus' Day, at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, and then we'll follow that up with solstice ceremony. So if y'all are in Constellations already, I hope you can make that. It would really be nice to connect and celebrate the ceremony with you. I know it's in the middle of the day for many of us, and that can be a tricky thing. So GeminiBrett.com/constellations. Just join now. It's only $16 a month, and typically there's a teaching every week. This week we get 2 and a ceremony, and there's regularly scheduled community discussion. $16 a month, leave at any time. It's ridiculously cheap for everything that you get. You'll never be able to do it all, but the stuff that you do, you will love because it comes from the heart. Okay, final link to share with you, GeminiBrett.com/donate. Let me see if that's right. Yeah, if you just want to buy me a cup of tea, you can see I love it. Please do. GeminiBrett.com/donate is a place you could go and support the work. But GeminiBrett.com/sessions, book a consultation with me. Let's explore the stars in your chart. I love starting with the signs and then taking it out to the faraway sky. GeminiBrett.com/constellations, or just click the community tab at GeminiBrett.com. But again, the greatest gift you can offer is the present of your presence. And I unwrap that with glee. Happy solstice to you, friends. Thank you for spending some time here with me at Storytelling Hour in this expression of some of the solstice mysteries. And I hope next time you see Santa's sleigh in the sky, you will think about what you can contribute to the Solstice Mystery School and then reach out and teach me. See you in space. Buttons.